just want to say again, thank you everybody for joining. We already mentioned that, we are in session two. And again, thanks to all the GDGs who are helping us out. And we were going over the badge tracker. This is how, we're going to drop the link in the chat. The link is in there so that you guys can take a look. Where is everybody? This is not like a competition, like we said. Hey, Kevin, how you doing, buddy? So this is just a tracker for everybody to check where everybody else is, but not a competition. It's just keeping track of where we are on our badges. A bunch of people are already way ahead of schedule, so that's good for you. But then this session would be just more like a preview for what you need to be focusing on, not a like a forcing you to be on that specific level. But if you're here in session two or week two, you should have at least completed these five badges. If you haven't completed, it's all good. You have the next 2 weeks to complete them. You see, we give people ample enough time for you to go over the badges, go over the material to cover. But let's say if you're right now today, if you're on track, you should have already completed all these five badges. But that's totally fine. You could be well on your way. That's okay. You do it at your own rhythm, at your own pace, and you complete these badges. But again, like I said, completing these badges gives you really good amount of knowledge when it comes to again being proficient as an associate cloud engineer, hands-on in the Google Cloud, and the knowledge that you require to be very actually to be very what is it what do they say very articulate when it comes to cloud lingo, so you can speak with a lot of people and really be very knowledgeable about that. Anyway, just wanted to remind you, we are in week two or session two. If you already completed the first three, all good. If you completed these next two, you're good. If you haven't, then make sure that by at least week three, you don't need to complete these. You at least need to catch up and complete week one and week two. I'm gonna be sending you this slide anyway, so that you know which are the badges that you should be tackling next time. Sorry about that. So again, we're gonna do now an exam guide review, meaning we're gonna review exactly what it was covered on week two. So if you haven't heard of any of these terms, you will now when you start taking all the week two badges. And then I'm just gonna review that for the ones that have already completed it. This will be a review, but for the ones who haven't completed, it will be a preview. So we're gonna go over the topics in week two, like things that you're gonna see or you already saw if you already got the badges. So for week two, for this one, you should be completing these two badges: the Essential Google Cloud Infrastructure Foundation, which gives you a very good foundation on cloud infrastructure. You I remember last time someone was, I think it was John. John asked me like, "Hey, so what do I get all this knowledge?" The knowledge is in there in exactly those badges. Those things, when you watch all the videos and you complete all those milestones, and you actually get a hands-on experience, you get all that information. All is in there, and I'm gonna go over those things as well. Now we're gonna go immediately over like reviewing those topics. So we're talking about like the Google Cloud. Again, you know that the Google Cloud is this plethora, this vast amount of services that Google has exposed for us developers to tap into their own ecosystem. This is the same technology that they are using for their infrastructure, and they've made all those aspects available to us. They're all services, they're all fully managed. Some of them are serverless, some of them they require infrastructure, but that is what the Google Cloud is. It's just a collection of services that makes us productive and allows us to develop great applications. They mention about the solution continuum. If you complete this badge, or if you already completed it, you should have seen this. When you take this on, they will talk about this, the solution continuum, meaning like a spectrum. So services in the Google Cloud start from physical stuff to intangible software based stuff. So from the left hand side, you start from the infrastructure as a service, meaning CPUs, memory, disks, interfaces, computers, virtual machines. That is, you start from the left, and then as you move to the right, things start getting virtualized and things start getting more abstract, all the way to software as a service. Software as a service, when you don't even touch hardware, you don't even deal with infrastructure, you don't even deal with a platform. So from the left hand side, physical stuff, all the way to the right hand side, where you don't, when there's no platform or infrastructure to manage. So that's why you have infrastructure as a service, which are CPUs, memories. Then you have like server instances, meaning like virtual machines and whatnot. Then you have in the middle, which is a happy medium between infrastructure as a service and software as a service. You have platform as a service, where now the hardware has been virtualized and you don't have to think about the underlying infrastructure, all the way to software as a service, when you don't have to worry about the platform and you only focus on the code, on the software, to deliver great experiences to your users. So for those of you, you will be looking at this solution continuum. This comes out in the test. So, what's IaaS? What's infrastructure as a service? What's platform as a service? What is software as a service? And then you need to know which services follow under each one of these services. There's one that is not shown in here, but there's one called functions as a service. And then there's another new one called containers as a service, which is a new service. And Linda explained the last time, is the service called Cloud Run. We're going to get to that in a minute. But you have infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. So you need to study this. And then you see now this thing translates now to this. From the left hand side, you see you have infrastructure as a service. So you have infrastructure as a service is compute engine. Compute engine represents infrastructure as a service offering, meaning compute engine virtual machines. Then you have Kubernetes engine, app engine, and cloud functions fall in between, in the platform as a service and serverless, like all in between. Whenever you have Google Kubernetes Engine, which is Google's offering fully managed way of managing containerized applications and orchestrating containers in the cloud, that's Kubernetes Engine. App Engine then falls under platform as a service, meaning you don't worry about the platform, you just deploy software, you deploy applications. That is App Engine right there in the middle. Then you go to Cloud Functions. Now, Cloud Functions, you don't even need to worry about the platform. You don't need to deliver like a full application. Cloud Functions now are small functions, even smaller pieces of code. Remember that Cloud Functions are the serverless crown jewel of the Google Cloud, and you can deploy single purpose event driven functions that get triggered by events, and you can do like microservices. You can just do single purpose functions, and you don't have to worry about provisioning servers or anything. And then the last one, which is part of the software as a service and the container as a service, which is Cloud Run, which is completely serverless containers. That is Cloud Run, which you just submit. You can publish your own containers, and the Google Cloud takes care of everything. You don't have to. It's not like Google Kubernetes where you need to manage the orchestration, your pods, your containers, and all of that. Cloud Run, you don't have to do that. It's serverless containers, which is pretty cool. The next way, you're gonna see this in the exam. They're gonna ask you what are the ways to interact with the Google Cloud Platform. You get 4 ways to interact with the Google Cloud Platform. You get the console, you get the Cloud Shell, you get RESTful APIs, and you get the mobile application. Mobile application, they don't deal with that on the exam. They may ask you, but they don't talk about that mostly because you're not all the time in the application, so they don't consider that very much, not important, but not like a key for you to to measure your knowledge on the cloud. So the REST-based APIs, yes, because there are RESTful services like endpoints and RESTful based APIs that you can use in your code to trigger infrastructure, like create a virtual machine, call a cloud function, trigger a pub sub, create a bucket. All those things you can do it from the RESTful API. Cloud Shell and the Cloud Console. Let me show you because I'm gonna jump right now in the Google Cloud Console and look at what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to see, like in this one, I was trying to join one of these like one of these labs because I just want to jump into the Google Cloud. Let me see if it lets me do it. There you go. So I'm gonna just use one of the labs, and I'm gonna do like the Google Cloud in there so I can show you guys. So I'm going to jump in the Google Cloud, in the Cloud Console, so that you guys can see, because I'm going to be doing it hands-on, like I mentioned. So every one of those things that I am reviewing, you're going to see it right here. So you see now, I just jumped in one of the labs and I'm doing one of the labs, but just to go over like this topic right here. So the 4 ways to interact with the GCP, the Google Cloud Console, the Google Cloud Platform is the console, which is this right here. And then you see that on the left hand side, you can access like all the services available in the Google Cloud. You know, you have the Compute Engine, which are the VMs, Kubernetes Engine, Cloud Storage, BigQuery, all of that, you access it here in the Google Cloud Console. This is the console. The second way is the Cloud Shell. Cloud Shell is this guy right here. When you click on this little icon, it gives you a web-based Cloud Shell. Is a preemptive virtual machine. They give you 5 GB of persistent storage, and you can access stuff here right on the cloud. This is like a virtual machine just for you, so that you can talk to the cloud, talk to your services via a command line. You can do like G Cloud, which is for like cloud, Google Cloud commands. You can do, for example, like GSUtil, which is for cloud storage. You can do a kubectl for Kubernetes. For example, here you can do like kubectl if you want to do like Kubernetes. You can do BQ, which is for BigQuery. There's a bunch of things that you can do. This is pretty cool. A virtual machine that you have access to the Google Cloud Console. Everything that you can do in the shell, you can do it in the console. But they say that in the exam actually comes out that the shell, you can do more in the shell than in the Google Cloud Console. That is one, a little bit of a trick question. But here I can show you a couple of things later, like what to do that actually are more that you can do than in the Google Cloud here through the UI. It's pretty cool. So let's continue. Other things that you're going to see in the exam, or actually in this week's session, are VPCs. Remember, virtual private clouds, which are nothing but like a little cloud, like a private cloud, but inside a public provider like Google. So a virtual private cloud allows you to manage like your own internal networks. You can create like little networks inside of a bigger network, and then you can just split all your resources and make them private, like from the outside world, and you can manage all your resources within those virtual private clouds. So by default, everybody gets a kind of like a VPC with a default network. Here you can see that you have a network. Let me show you. So if you just go here to VPC network, like you can click here where it says VPC network, and you go to VPC networks here in the Google Cloud, you will see that everybody has a default. There it is. So everybody, when you join the cloud, you have to have a network so that you can add virtual machines. Remember, a virtual machine is like a computer. A computer like a virtual machine doesn't work if it doesn't have an IP address, and it needs to be inside a network. So everybody, whether you're just a single person or a company, you get a default network so that you can attach resources to it, services, computers, Kubernetes instances, and all of that. So everybody gets a network, and the network that you get is the default. Perfect. Then we're gonna they talk about IP addresses, how you like virtual machines get internal virtual IP addresses. Compute engine instances get external external IP addresses, and whenever you create like sub networks, then you get like a range of IP addresses that you can assign to your own machines. This you're gonna get it in that week too. They talk about the 3 types of VPCs, the 3 types of virtual private cloud networks. The default, which is, again, like I said, every project here, look, in my project, in this Quick Labs, you get a default. And then the default network gives you 1 subnet per region. If you can see it right here, look, you get 1 subnet per region. US Central, you get a subnet. And then you get a range of IP addresses. Every subnet, remember, subnets are like just a range of IP addresses within your VPC. And then you get 1 for every region, because in one region you want to add virtual machines. Well, you need IP addresses to assign to those things. You also get default firewall rules. The second type of VPC is auto mode, and auto mode is also default. Default is an auto mode type of network. And you see, you get 1 subnet per region. You saw it right there. You get regional IP allocation. You get fixed a CIDR range of IP addresses of subnetworks per region, expandable up to 16 CIDR IP range addresses. And then the custom mode is another type of VPC, then that it doesn't have default subnets, but it gives you a lot of control on how to create your own VPCs. Like you create your own subnetworks, you designate how many IP addresses. All you need to make sure is that the IP addresses do not overlap between subnetworks. Let's say one subnetwork has like from IP address 1 to 10, but then the other one has to start from 11 to 20, then the other one from 21 to 30. They cannot overlap. So that's one thing that you're gonna, if you already encounter it, you know it. If you're gonna take it next week, you're gonna see this. I love this thing about the networks and how networks work in the Google Cloud. So networks are global in the Google Cloud. You can have, check this out, like, look how cool this is. You can have multiple networks within your, let's say your let's say in your project, and then one network. You see that each there are 5 networks in here, and then you have multiple regions split across those networks. You can have one virtual machine in one network in one region, let's say US East 1, and then you have another virtual machine in another region, completely in Europe. Look, one virtual machine in the US and one virtual machine in Europe, but if they are part of the same network, they can talk to each other as if they were in the same rack, as if they were in the same room. But one virtual machine is in one country, one other virtual machine is in another country. But if you assign them to the same network, and then you assign the IP addresses, they communicate among each other via internal IP addresses. So that's how cool it is. Like how you see how network is something so global and so virtualized that it doesn't matter. You have one virtual machine in Europe and one here, and the network treats it as if they were side by side. However, you could have 2 virtual machines in the same region. Look, in the same region, like for example, in the US East 1, 2 virtual machines. But if they're in separate networks, they cannot talk to each other unless they can communicate with their external IP addresses. Here, because they're part of the same network, they can talk via their own the internal IP addresses. I'm gonna demonstrate that in just a minute. For example, here, look what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna create one virtual machine, and see that I told you that we're gonna do this very hands-on. So here in the Google Cloud, I'm gonna create one VM. I'm gonna create 2 VMs. I'm gonna test this one. So both of them are gonna be in the same network. So I'm gonna create one instance in, let's say, US East 1 and one in Europe West 1, but because they're part of the same network, meaning my default network. For example, look at this. I'll say US VM, and then this one I'm gonna do it in the US Central, and let's say US Central C, for example, in that zone. I'm gonna do like a N1 F1 micro, a very tiny VM. I'm not gonna say anything about the boot disk. We're gonna keep a Debian Linux. You can allow HTTP if you want, but I'm just gonna create it. So I'm gonna create one VM in I'm gonna create one VM here in the US, and I'm calling it US VM, and I'm gonna create another one in the let's say in Europe. So I'm gonna say EU VM. And then if I just say, and I go Europe, Central, and Warsaw, I didn't specify the network because it's already there. Let me just show you. For example, if I just select that the VM's series is N1, and I'm gonna do like F1 micro. And if I go here to the networking, let me see, where is it? We have container service, we have identity, firewall, advanced options right here. So in the advanced options, if I go to the networking, you will see that, for example, if I say network interface card, if you select like a network, like a default network, actually they already fall under the default network, but you can specify things. You see where it says network interface default? So now both virtual machines are in the default network, meaning they're going to share the same IP range because I created in the default network. So now I'm going to create this virtual machine in Europe, and now you will see how from one virtual machine I can ping the other, even though they're in separate regions, in separate parts of the world, but they're part of the same network. I should be able to ping one from inside of the other. But if I create them in separate networks, then I won't be able to ping them because they are considered separate networks. The only way that you can communicate from one network to another is via their external IP addresses. So check this out. So I'm going to hide the info panel. I have my US virtual machine, and you see how immediately the virtual machines get an internal IP address and an external IP address. So you see how these two should be able to communicate within the network, and these two, if I want to communicate, if they were in separate networks, I had to use their external IP. So let's try this. I'm gonna go to the United States virtual machine. So I'm gonna SSH into it. For example, all of this you're gonna see it in the labs. So I'm not doing. Octavio says, how do I get registered to track my badges? You just have to send me your public profile. So you go to Cloud Skills Boost. Cloud Skills Boost, and then you go to here. Actually, I need to go to. I think I have it here. So in the Cloud Skills Boost, if you want to track your badge, if you want us to see you there, give me your public profile. So you go to Cloud Skills Boost, make sure that you're joined, and then that you have your badge, your profile in here. You click here where it says public profile, and then give me this URL right here. With this URL, we add you to the list, and then we should be able to do it. Ahmed says, this is not related questions to what we're discussing now. It's okay. Don't worry, Ahmed. Don't worry, Ahmed. We're going to get to that in a minute. So let's now, again, like I mentioned, we're going to now join where I think I lost now. Okay, here it is. So I thought I lost my SSH. So now I'm going to SSH from one machine to the other. So I'm going to ping it. So I'm going to say ping -C3, and I am in the US, right? And I'm going to ping the internal IP of the one in Europe. So if I paste that IP and then I do it, you see how I'm getting a reply. So 3 packets transmitted, 3 packets received, 0 packet loss. One is in Europe, one is in the US, and I'm able to talk to that machine. Why? Because they're in the same network. That's exactly what we just demonstrated here by saying that when they're in the same network, even if they're in separate regions, you can talk to each other. So that's what's good about it. That's what's good about it. Now, if I create both but in separate networks, the only way to ping them is via their external IP addresses. Otherwise, you can't talk to them. Cool. I hope you guys got that thing. That's something cool that I wanted to try with you guys and show it to you. Remember about subnetworks, we were talking about subnetworks. A subnetwork is nothing more than a range of IP addresses. So a subnetwork could be like in a zone. So all a zone, because it's kind of like a data center, like in Google, you get a range of IP addresses that then you can assign to, to your resources. Like they get, when you create resources under that zone, they get one of those IP addresses, and then you create like your little subnetwork right there. So in subnetwork, this is something that comes out in the test. There are 4 IP addresses reserved on every subnetwork. The first one and the second one. The first one is for the subnet. The second one is for the gateway. Right here, look. 10.0.0.0 is for the subnet. The first one is for the gateway. Then now you have the remaining addresses for your let's say your VMs or your resources, and the last 2 are also reserved. So if they ask you how many IPs are reserved in a subnetwork, 4 addresses, the first 2 and the last 2. Otherwise, then you can use all the other IPs in between. VMs can be on the same subnet, like I mentioned, but in different zones, like I showed you. And a single firewall rule can apply to both VMs. Like because even though those VMs may be in different zones, but within the same subnet, remember, everything is virtual, like in the Google Cloud. It's not like you have like physical machines connected. That's what's cool about it. Like one could be in one region, one could be in another region, so that then you can increase the availability. Like let's say when your network requests come into your network, the Google Cloud, what it does, it just reroutes them to the closest region where your user is. If the users are in Europe, it's not going to reroute it to the one in the US. It's going to reroute it to the ones in Europe, and then you have better latency, faster connection to your resources. So that's what's cool about this. You can definitely expand your subnets without recreating instances. That's something that comes out in the test a lot. That it tells you like, okay, remember I mentioned that you cannot overlap. The IP addresses cannot overlap within a subnet. So within a network, you have multiple subnets. Subnets are kind of like within a region, right? And then you have those IP addresses cannot overlap. IP range must be a unique valid CIDR block. It could be like /20/16. All depends on how many instances you want. You can expand the number of IPs, but you cannot shrink it. Once you expand your subnet, you cannot shrink it. Automode said that it can be expanded from 20 to 16, and they always say do not create subnets, meaning like the range of IP addresses. If you're not going to use all those IPs, don't create it. If you know that you're going to have like a bunch of virtual machines, a bunch of VMs in one subnet, just create enough so that you know you're going to use those. Don't over create a bunch of IP addresses. So make sure that avoid large subnets. Remember that I mentioned that VMs can have internal and external IP addresses. Internal IP addresses are allocated from subnet range to the VMs, but they're dynamically allocated. You don't assign them allocated because you don't have like static IPs. But they are the DHCP, which is the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol. They say that they get renewed every 24 hours. So your internal IP addresses are assigned dynamically as you create your VMs. And you have, as you see, they all have an internal IP and they have an external IP. Internal IPs so that they can communicate among each other. External IPs if you want to expose them to the world. One thing that they ask in the test is the recommended way to create virtual machines is only assigning an IP, an internal IP. Do not create an external IP unless you require it, because then you're protecting your VMs. You have other things to improve, like how they communicate to the outside. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But in the test, they ask you, what's the best way to secure your VM? Add just an internal IP. Don't create external IPs unless you really need it. And you see, like you can for external IPs, you can reserve it, but they get assigned from a pool. They call it ephemeral IP addresses. So because that's what I'm saying, like they're reused, like those IP addresses, those external IPs, so you can connect to the outside world. VM doesn't know about the external IP. They only know about the internal IP. You see that the VMs don't know about the external IPs. If I'm here and I try to do like, is this Linux? If I say like if config, what is it? Host name? I forgot. Like, how do you do here? Oh, there you go. How do you show like the IP address? You can say like IP address, and then you see like the IP address in here. Like you will never see the external IP address whenever you're checking. You only see the internal. You never see the external IP from within your VMs. They don't know about external. It's Google who knows about the external IP. They just map it to your internal, but that's what's cool about it. So you guys remember, I was doing if config. I thought it wasn't a Mac, but you say here IP address, and then you get like the IP address of your internal machine. There you go. So this comes out in the test, and you will also see it in the badge that you're gonna get. DNS, they talk about DNS very briefly in the exam as well, not too heavy because this is not something really common. But you have to learn about what the FQDN is, a fully qualified domain name. Your IP, your virtual machines, they do have an internal IP or sometimes optional an external IP, but they do get a DNS, like kind of like a DNS. But it's like your DNS is the name of the virtual machine. So they give you like some weird name, like blah blah blah. Like for example, my virtual machine is called EUVM or USVM. So it would be USVM dot the name of the region dot blah blah blah, right? So if I show, for example, click one of these VMs, I think I should be able to see like the DNS. The DNS for this, let me see if it so it says Sage. But that's only about the boot disk. It shows it somewhere. I can't remember where it is, but it does show you like what the like the details of that of like the I'm sorry, like the DNS that they assign. But it's something like ephemeral as well. So it's the name of the VM plus the region plus blah blah blah. So that's how they give you. So here IP addresses, you get the region, blah blah blah, VPC labels, all that stuff. So this is how you view like more about those things. Okay, so let me continue. Again, this is all you're going to be seeing in the badge that you're going to be getting. They also talk a little bit about the external IP addresses. Remember, instances with external IP addresses can allow connections from hosts outside of the project, meaning users can connect directly using an external IP. You can connect to that machine. You can expose services from it so that they can communicate to the outside. And remember, they have two terms to call, like let's say input from network, like network input and network output. So they call it ingress, meaning incoming traffic, and egress, external outgoing traffic from your VMs or from your services. So that's something that they always keep track of. So this is something that you will see in that badge and during that quest. They talk about routes. This also comes out in the test. So you should be very familiar with what a route is, meaning it's a mapping of an IP range to a destination. So you get a route, meaning, for example, like, for example, here it says like every network has routes that let your virtual machine instances in a network to send traffic to each other. So they have routes to each other. Also, you can set up, you say that a route is a mapping of an IP range. You can set which IP ranges, which IPs you can receive information from and which IPs you can send information to. So you can specify that like in your firewall rules, you can specify those in your routes. So those are things that you need to be familiar with. Routes, what routes are, how a default route directs packets to destinations outside of the network, and how firewall rules must allow the packets, like packets coming in and out. I like about the firewall rules. For example, like I mentioned here, like every network has like a default firewall rules, and the firewall rules that are here by default are like, you see, uh, for example, they have like IP address ranges that they allow incoming information. Like, I'm sorry, let me just I thought I was gonna hide this. There you go. So you see we have in ICMP, RDP, SSH. So they allow, for example, like specific protocols, specific ports. They allow inputs like ingress. They allow me, for example, to connect to an SSH to my VMs. So you see that these are like the default firewall rules. You allow internal connection. It allows RDP. You can do remote desktop connectivity. You could do RDP. You could do SSH. You can SSH into the machines to an individual to a specific port. So these are the default firewall rules, and firewall rules are nothing more than just software defined rules that just direct traffic or block traffic to certain IPs, to certain services within your cloud. Everything, pretty much everything in the Google Cloud is like software defined. And you see that it says connections are allowed or denied at the instance level. They apply to the network as a whole. Firewall rules are stateful and implied, deny all ingress and allow all egress, meaning by default, if you don't have any rules, it will deny all incoming traffic, but it will allow outgoing traffic. That's why you're protecting a bunch of, let's say, DDoS attacks into your machines, but you can talk to the outside. Google Cloud Firewall use cases, like the egress. You have to understand again what egress is, how to set up firewall rules, your own firewall rules, how to use tags and labels to identify your resources so that you can apply firewall rules to those resources. Because instead of you like assigning like a specific IP or a specific resource, you just apply firewall rules to tags and labels. That is something that you need to know for the exam. And you see that the conditions for firewall rules are like for egress, meaning like outgoing traffic. You need to know, you can specify the IP addresses that you can talk to, in the outside. You can specify destination site ranges. As the same thing as protocols and ports. You see, like allow, permit the matching egress connection, or block the matching egress connection. Like you need to know these things about egress, ingress, which how do you set up those IP ranges so that you can connect to those machines. You need to know about this. This is key. In the exam, this comes out. You need to know about the pricing about ingress and egress. Ingress, remember, incoming traffic. There's no charge for ingress. But for egress, meaning outgoing, there are some differences. Maybe you can just memorize it, frankly. You can say all ingress is free and all egress only internal to Google is free. Everything else is 1 cent. Uh, uh, yes. So you could do like, see, ingress is free. Egress to the same zone, meaning two virtual machines, let's say, talking to each other through internal IP addresses is free. Egress to Google products, meaning from your VMs or from your services to Google services is free. And egress outgoing to like a different cloud service, but within the same region, within Google, with certain exceptions, there's no charge. Everything else is 1 cent. And then if you do egress between regions, not including traffics, it varies by region. So you kind of like have to memorize this one, but it's very important to know about the pricing. This is a really cool thing that you need to learn, which is the Google Cloud Pricing Calculator. If you Google Cloud Pricing Calculator, they ask about this, and it's kind of like you as a, as a DevOps or as a developer that needs to allocate resources in the Google Cloud. You need to know how much those things cost. So yes, Linda mentioned that when you bring your data in GCP is free. That is correct. And yes, so for example, here you can say, oh, compute engine, let me see how much it costs. This is the Google Cloud Pricing Calculator that you can just tweak things and then you get the pricing. That way you can come to your manager and say, hey, look, we need to allocate a couple of VMs, 10 VMs. How much will it cost? Okay, so what are you going to do? How many instances? We want 10 virtual machines. What are these for? I'm going to say, let's say web services. And what type of operating system? Okay, I want to do, let's say, SQL Server Web, something like that. The type of model, it's preemptible. Like if you remember, you don't the preemptible VMs are the ones that are very transient and they can be shut down at any time. No, I want them regular. I want, for example, if you want general purpose, compute optimized, let's say you're doing machine learning, you can do either compute optimized or memory optimized. But let's say these are for regular web servers, so you could do general purpose. What type of series? I want them the lowest, like the N1 or the N2, and I want like an F micro, like really tiny virtual machines. What kind of boot disk? I want either SSD. Remember, we were talking about, yes, we're getting a copy of these recordings. Definitely. You can just hook up, join our Slack, and this is going to be recorded. We're going to post it in there. The slides will be there as well. So you can do SSD. Remember, solid state drive. These disks are really fast, and you can use them for scratch space. Jose, remember the scratch space thing? Yeah. So you can do SSD, for example, like that. And then you can say how much size I want in my boot disk. I could do like 10 gigs, for example. Now, let's say I'm good with this. Let me see how much it's going to cost. So I'm going to, by default, I'm going to say, I'm going to keep it in my region in Iowa, closer to me, to my users. It's going to be open. It's going to be available for 24 hours running, let's say 7 days a week. Let's see how much it's going to cost. Here it is. Now you can say it's going to cost me what, $17? No, I'm sorry. No, $544 per month. That's what it's going to cost. So if you say, but you see, as far as like hours, because I'm going to keep it running 24/7, you see it's going to be 7,300 total hours per hour, a virtual machine running in US Central. So now I can say, well, I can afford $544 a month. I get a little bit of a discount, because of the fact that, you see, like this is an estimated cost per month, but it's kind of giving you, saying that an estimated component cost is $527. All see, because it's Linux, I think they probably, well, it says paid, so it's already paid. So I'm actually paying for the OS here as well. It's kind of weird. I thought you don't pay anything for like Ubuntu or something. But anyway, this is the pricing calculator that you should be familiar with. And this doesn't come out in the exam, but I think they ask a question or two about that. And yeah, Jose says we better set up some budget. Yes, you should say some budget alerts, some quotas, all of that, just to make sure that you don't exceed your capabilities. Otherwise, you're gonna get this bill at the end of the month. There you go. So good. So that is the pricing calculator. Remember, we were talking about the how to create multiple virtual machines. Let me go back to my VM. So I go to the compute engine, virtual machines. When you create virtual machines in multiple regions, like one in the US and one in Europe, you increase the availability. Meaning when let's say let's say one of your VMs goes down, maybe the other one can pick up the slack. Your application is more available globally. You're catering to the users in the US, and you also catering to the users in the, let's say, in Europe. But the cool thing is, because I created within the same network, they can talk to each other. And there's even, because you take advantage of Google's global network and this fiber optic submarine fiber optic cable, you can take advantage of that to actually increase availability by doing multiple zones. And this is what I'm talking about, like multiple regions. This one I meant, this one is actually within multiple zones. This increases the availability, and this is what they call like high availability zones. If you have one zone, meaning like the US, the West, like in California, and then you have one in the East, like in here, like in Massachusetts, and then you set up these two, let's say, resources in both zones. If once half of the US goes down, your applications continue running because you have high availability zones, one in the East, one in the West, that increases the availability. This is what I was talking earlier. Sorry about that. So the globalization with multiple regions. This is what I did earlier. I did one region in the US, one region in the Europe, and you can still communicate via internal IPs, even because they're within the same network. So whether you're doing two zones in within the same, let's say, region, or multiple regions within the same network, you get that benefits of like that high redundancy, high availability, and all of that. Cloud NAT, that's what I was mentioning earlier. This you also get it in the, of course, in the badges that you're going to get for this week. Cloud NAT means network address translation. This is what I was mentioning, that whenever you create your virtual machines, make sure that they have an internal IP, not so much an external IP unless you really need it. But if you do really want your VMs to, let's say, connect to the outside world, but in a private way without exposing them to the world, you use something called Cloud NAT, which what it does is just a service that translates your internal IP addresses to external IP addresses, but it kind of like allows, actually, not that, it actually, what it does is allows them to access the outside world. Let's say just to get software for like updates. You want a new patch, you want a new version of a piece of software. Instead of you having an external IP so that you can connect to the public network, the public internet, you use Cloud NAT, which in a very secure way, it allows you to access the internet just to get for private instances, so that you can get, update your servers, update software, but no one can see it. No one sees your VMs. It's like they don't exist, but you use Cloud NAT for that. Private Google Access is another way so that your virtual machines, even though they're private and have only internal IP addresses, they can connect to, for example, a cloud storage bucket. They can connect to cloud functions. They can connect to Google, to YouTube, whatever, like APIs and services in Google without exposing themselves to the internet. You use a private Google Access. So you have to enable that. I think it's here. Look, if you go, for example, if you create an instance, and then you want this instance to have private Google Access, it will show you right here. Look, check this out. So if I say, this is going to say a Google VM instance, right? And then you can say, I'm going to say this is a tiny virtual machine, F1 micro. I'm still going to keep it like, Debian. But check this out. If you keep going and then you go here, advanced options, management, there's the place where you do like a private, let me see, I think it's in networking, network performance, network interfaces. The let me see, I think it's in there's the place where you have to say like allow full access to all cloud APIs or set access for each API. Here it is. So this set access to each API is what you're giving access as private Google access. So I want to say from this virtual machine, I'm going to keep it private, but I'm going to give access to BigQuery. I am going to give it access to Cloud Debugger. I am going to access Cloud PubSub. This is what you're saying, what we're saying here. You're given private Google access to your virtual machine, and you can access Google APIs and services in a piecemeal type of way. So see, I went here to where it says identity API access. When I say allow default access, that's just the default access that you get, certain things that you can access. But here you actually set access for each API, and then you specify which APIs you want in the private Google services, and then you get that. So that is private Google access. And that's it. That's all I wanted to cover. This is, again, a very quick, high-level overview of what you're getting here in this week 2. I encourage, again, you guys to truly go for the Essential Google Cloud, this badge, because this badge actually gives you that knowledge. Like all the things that I just mentioned are covered in these videos right here. See, virtual networks, virtual machines, they talk a lot about those things. Interacting with the Google Cloud, you see like me going inside of the Google Cloud, the Cloud Shell. See, you learn about virtual machines, you learn about the pricing, you learn about images, compute engine options, virtual machines, all of those things you actually learn a lot about. So I encourage you, virtual networks. Remember, we were talking about IP addresses, mapping IP addresses, the pricing, VPCs. This is key. Like they hammer a lot on VPC in the exam. You should make sure that you do that. Jack says, did you send the RTC week 2? I will be sending it right now. Look, check this out. I'm going to say share to anyone with the link. I'm going to copy the link. I'm dropping it in the chat. Everybody gets this video. We're going to publish it in the YouTube channel. You right now have this this PowerPoint. And if you haven't finished these 3 badges, start with those 3 badges. Don't jump on this. Start these 3 badges, because this gives you that core foundation knowledge about the Google Cloud. They explain every service like at a high level. But then here in this one, you start now getting more deeper. And then the way that I was doing, it was actually just like I did right now. I just grabbed one of the code labs, one of the labs, and then I just jumped inside of the Google Cloud and started just messing with it. Just like I'm doing right now. I'm just playing. And this is how I feel comfortable going inside of the Google Cloud, going inside of the Cloud Shell. I love the Cloud Shell, guys. Like this is so cool here. Like the Google Cloud Shell is like really, really good. Like right here from the Cloud Shell, you can create an instance. You can say, for example, like G Cloud, compute. You say create. You can say compute instances, create, and then I can say new VM, and then I can say machine type. N1 standard 1, and then I can say region, US Central, zone, US Central 1A, something like that. Let me see. I think I may have made a mistake, but you see, I was almost there, like trying to finish creating the VM. But this is how you get familiar with the Google Cloud Shell, how you can create VMs like that. Look, see, I can say create this on this zone. I'm going to say yes. And just with that command in the Cloud Shell, I think it's going to create a VM. See, doing this, I just created it. And now if I go to the VMs, I should be able to have that there. There it is, new VM, right from the Google Cloud, right in front of you. I was able to create a virtual machine with just this little bit of a command. How do you learn this command? Now you ask me. Is all in those badges. This I didn't come up with it because I'm a cloud architect. No, I was going over those badges, the videos, and the hands-on labs that are there in those 2 badges. So the same way that I'm feeling comfortable in going through the Google Cloud and the Google Cloud Shell, you will too, if you complete the badges. That's it. Great. Any questions now? I'm going to open it to questions for everybody. If anybody has any questions before we wrap it up, we can either questions. We can open up. Jose, you can say, can we create it from a YAML file when we specify what we want? That is correct. Jose Ramos specifies something very important, that you can create. You can create virtual machines through a YAML. That's called using either like Terraform or Deployment Manager. Those are ways that you can create virtual machines using, that's what they call it, infrastructure as code. So you can just set up your YAML, which is even better. So Jose brings up a very good point. You can optimize the creation of your resources in the Google Cloud using code like YAML, like a YAML file. Great question, Jose. Any other questions from anybody? You can, if you want to speak, you can come off mute. I see Jeffrey, Lionel, Carol, and Kevin. Do you guys want to chime in, say anything about anything that I discussed, or anybody else has any questions? Ahmed says, can you please share some use cases on when we might need to assign external IP? Good point, Ahmed. You can assign an external IP if you, let's say, if you have a VM and you're hosting like a web server, you want your users to actually talk to that the services that are located inside of that virtual machine. I would always encourage, if you're, let's say, running like a batch job, you're running like an internal process, don't expose an external IP. You just keep it internal. Don't allow like any incoming requests. But the cases for external IPs is because, let's say, you want to expose services that are running inside. You have a web server, you have a RESTful API, you want to provide like a connectivity to a SQL server that you have in there. All those cases allow for external IPs to be assigned. Jose says, what is the percentage of networking questions in the exam? A lot. I could say they think that you're like, you're actually hooking up cables in Google. Like, they truly mention a lot of that. They're trying to trick you. I wish they would have given more like coding, let's say, questions, but there's a fair amount. In the 50 questions, you could probably get like 20 on networking. They mention a lot of VPC. Study VPC, study VPN, study like the CIDR ranges, study subnets, your regions, subregions, how they connect to one another, all those things, like, they trick you. So, but if you focus on those and you elaborate like a good study plan, you're gonna do really good. Jeffrey, Jeffrey already says you can use Terraform. There you go. Yeah, Jeffrey already answered that piece. Thank you, Jeffrey. Ahmed, thank you for your question. Yes, exactly. And Jeffrey already answered the same question, so thank you. Jeff and I are on the same channel, so thank you, Jeffrey, for answering those questions via in a text format. Anybody has any questions? Remember, another thing, even if you have not joined these sessions, I just figured it out. You can invite your friends. Anybody who RSVP to any of the sessions, the remaining sessions, is gonna get 3 months for free of cloud of the 3 months. Yes. So you're still in time if you want to bring over your friends to study with us and to join these sessions. Anybody who just joins any of the sessions, that the 7 sessions that we're holding, is going to get the 3 months in the Google Cloud Boost, and they can study for the exam and get ready for the exam. So please spread the word, bring your friends. That's exactly how we want. And I have a friend of mine just joining, Cirilo, thank you so much for joining. He was one of the ones who actually just joined, and he took advantage of that. So please bring your friends. Make sure that you bring your friends. You study for the Associate Cloud Certificate certification. We have also good news for those of you. We will be providing vouchers for those of you who sign up to take the exam. If you sign up to take the exam by the end of the cycle, which is by Cloud Next, which is October the 11th and the 13th, if you decide to take the exam between here and then, and you sign up for the exam, we're going to give you a voucher. So we just need like your confirmation that you signed up for the exam. We're going to give you a voucher. First 10 people who sign up for the exam are going to get a voucher. Elizabeth says, can VPCs have multiple CIDR blocks? So a VPC, a virtual private cloud, you can specify multiple subnetworks as long as the CIDR blocks don't overlap each other. So make sure that your solder blocks are within decent ranges. That you know that you're going to allocate those IP ranges, and you can have the subnets that are let's say required for your virtual private cloud. But yeah, you can have multiple solder blocks as long as they don't overlap each other. Paul, he's like our MVP. He says, Terraform Fundamentals Lab, images Debian 9, which no longer exist. Ooh, interesting. Really? Okay, cool. That's a good one. Ahmed says, in that cases where we use external IPs, then what security steps should we use? Yes, security steps, add firewall rules. Make sure that you can block certain IP addresses. You do. There's a bunch of resources in the Google Cloud that allow you to prevent. I don't know about like a Bastion server. I mean, it's all virtual in the Google Cloud, but you can specify some firewall rules in there to prevent like a certain range of IP addresses can connect to your services. You can specify those like egress rules and ingress rules so that okay, only these IPs can connect to my machines, not like anything that I don't know about. So that's something that you should know. And yes, Ahmed, I would say emphasize on VPCs, emphasize on those things, that network related questions, which are very tricky for the exam. But if you learn them, you're good. Jose says, how long should we wait to know if we pass the exam? Dude, I took it, and like a few minutes ago, they just said, yeah, you passed it. And they don't do any fanfare about it. I felt so bad. I'm like, man, I passed it. And then just like, yeah, you passed the exam, and you will wait for the certification to arrive in a couple of days. And then like a few hours, I got all of that like right away. So you could get it, not instantly, but you're going to get an email just telling you that you passed. But yes, it's really fast. It's not like you wait days like before. Like you were like biting your fingernails, waiting whether you passed or not. But again, please focus on this material that we're giving you. Uh, the badges. Please go to the badges. All the knowledge that you see me spewing out, nothing I didn't learn it that it wasn't among those 5 badges right there. Everything that I'm saying, everything that I'm speaking is within those 5 badges. So you should too be that proficient once you like devour these badges and the hands-on labs. So that's what I encourage everybody to do here. And of course, please try to try to get those badges. Try to join us in our office hours, which I now have created longer office hours, and I've made them part of our series. I made them. If you go to GDG Lawrence, if you want to be part of our office hours, the office hours now will be a regular event um every other week, and you can join us like the same for those of you who already joined like our Google Meet. I can send you an invitation again to this link, but because you're here, you can join already these events. The office hours now are a regular event. That way we don't get kicked out of the Google Meet. So please make sure that next Thursday you're joining there. We're going to be reviewing more exam questions. Linda's gonna be there, like the awesome self, with her awesome self, just answering questions and giving people tips about the exam. But this is what's gonna give you the confidence to go take the exam. And to be honest with you guys, take it from me, take it from Linda, from Elaine. None of us were cloud people before this. I didn't know about cloud until I took the exam, and I went ahead and I took it and I passed it. So all of you are also you have a very high chance to pass the exam if you study, if you focus, if you follow these resources that we're giving you. You should be able to pass it. So that's what I'm saying. Prepare for that so that we can give you your badge. The first 10 people who sign up for taking the exam between here and October 11th, you're gonna get a voucher so you could go and complete it. But you have to give us the confirmation that you signed up. So okay, now I'm gonna give a chance to these folks to say anything before we wrap up. Kevin, Carol, Lionel, Jeffrey, Linda, anybody?
Yeah, it's been a great session, Roman. Thank you for so much for that, and thank you for everybody for coming. Um, basically, the material, like Roman said, is basically in the couple of in the course, and then the lab material that you're going to go to.
Yes, and Kevin also brought up a good point. So all of those resources are good. Don't be afraid also to venture out. I was also studying like from Coursera and from even YouTube videos. Like while I was doing my lawn, like somebody I know here is gonna laugh. While I was doing my lawn, I had my AirPods and I was listening to one guy just talk about the Google Cloud while I was doing my lawn. I was just listening to a video. So you see, like even other resources, you can find alternative ways to study. So yes, yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
one of the other
Thank you
resources.
so much, Roman and Kevin and Lana and Carol. Collaboration, really great event, and I'm really happy that we can help others to get certified.
Yes. Thank you, everybody.
So I was going to say that one of the other resources you can actually use is documentation. Google documentation, very comprehensive. If you have time to read them, that's very good.
Yes, totally right. And Jeff, yeah, he's now making fun of me when I was like, yeah, but Jeffrey answered Ahmed with something good. I mentioned the
Herman,
firewalls. Yeah, go ahead, Lionel. Sorry.
how was your experience with Coursera? Do you think that was a good content to prepare for the exam?
Good question, Lionel. Coursera has exactly the same content that is here in Google Cloud Boost. That's why now I'm saying don't do Coursera because Coursera points you here. Coursera has some videos, but now Google kind of like reclaimed those videos and the content and the code labs, and they now made it into Cloud Boost skills and Cloud Skills Boost. Sorry. So now I say don't do Coursera because Coursera, you pay in Coursera and then Coursera brings you back over here. And I'm like, why then pay Coursera? Coursera brings me back over. And all this content is amazing. Like this is exactly the same stuff that I studied back then for the architect certification. That's why I say this material is really complete and you're getting it for free and for 3 months. So take advantage of that. Give it to your friends. Mention it to your friends. Tell them to join next session because they're gonna get the 3 months. You're going to get the 3 months for free. So bring your friends. Let's all join. Let's all pass the certification. I know a bunch of people already here that are going to pass it with us. So please join this movement so that by Cloud Next, we're all Associate Cloud Certificate Engineers. Yes. Yeah. Jeffrey just, he nailed it in the nail. That's exactly what it is. Yes. Is that you, Mohammed? Yeah, so I said, yeah, tell everybody, tell all your friends, tell everybody. Luisa, you say you're new. How do you reach out to get started? Luisa, I'm gonna drop the link again. Please join our Slack channel. I can show you the Slack channel right here. Please join this Slack channel. And Luisa, you're not late. You are early because you're never late when you want to get knowledge. So to Luisa, if you want to start, you have the time, you are on time, join our Slack channel because you're going to get a lot of resources in there. But I would encourage you then to focus on start in order. So I think you're going to get the link for this slideshow. Let me share it again. Let me share this link. I'm going to drop it right here. And you can start, Luisa, you can start with these 3 badges right here. With these 3 badges, you start on week 1, and then you start learning from zero. You just came for the first time and you don't know about cloud. These 3 badges will give you the foundation that you need to understand what cloud is. And of course, you're going to have a community of support in us. All of us in here are going to help you out. If you feel like this is going to give you an edge in your job, it's going to give you an edge in your career, a step up in your career. The Associate Cloud Engineer is an amazing certification to get. And not to be promoting here, but yes, the Google Cloud certifications are the most sought after right now. Ever since I think a couple of years ago, the Google Cloud certifications are like the most sought after ones, the most popular ones. Cirilo, yeah, he already started. Yeah, there you go. So Cirilo, he started like a few days ago. He's already got a couple of badges. So you see, you are on time. You just continue going for it. If you sign up between here and October, you're gonna get a badge. The first 10 people who sign up to take the test are gonna get a voucher. I said a badge. I said a voucher. You get a voucher, and if you pass the exam, we're gonna give you a cloud swag pack, like a backpack, t-shirts, and stuff like that. We're still working those details out, but make sure that you join our sessions and continue working your way. So for our next session, if you see, our next session will be, if we go to the GDG Lawrence, again, remember, in the off weeks, we do review the exam questions. So next week, we're going to be reviewing more exam questions. And then in 2 weeks, we have session 3, where we're going to be discussing essential cloud infrastructure services. So we're going to be discussing week 3. But for those like Luisa, Cirilo, you guys are good. Continue on your own. Continue on your own path, getting these badges, asking us questions in the Slack channel. Any questions you may have, let us know. We're there, always supporting. But join the sessions, the office hours. You ask your questions, we clear your roadblocks, and you practice for the exam there to give you more confidence on that. Perfect. Elizabeth says, will we get the link to join the office hours next week? It's already available. Elizabeth, you can just go right now and sign up. Right now, if you go to GDG Lawrence, this is the link. Just sign up. See, already 2 people RSVP. I'm gonna RSVP for next week. Just make sure that you join this, and then that's it. See, I'm already signed up. So make sure that you sign up for this event. You go to GDG Lawrence, and here is the event already. So make sure that you let me go back to GDG Lawrence. Sorry, GDG Lawrence, and the upcoming one is open for everybody. It's completely free, of course. You just go look. There's the link. I'm gonna drop it in the chat, and you can sign up right now if you want. See, already 3 people have RSVP'd. Keep RSVPing. Next week, we're going to review exam questions. So I know we went a little bit over, but I just wanted to answer your questions. If anybody wants to, again, continue on your journey, if you're like a lone wolf, it's okay. But please come to our sessions where we do, let me close the cloud here. Join our sessions where we practice the exam questions, because that gives you the confidence that the questions that are going to come out in the exam. You get a feel for them, and then you will learn in a community-centric environment. Okay. Any questions before we close the session? And we'll see you next Thursday. So just wanted to give you one more chance before we close up. Okay, so I believe we should be good. Please, if you have any questions, join the Slack channel. Drop your questions there. Invite your friends for the next session. They're going to get 3 months of Cloud Skills Boost. If they sign up for any of these sessions, they're going to get 3 months of Cloud Skills Boost. No questions asked. You're just going to get that because Google has been very, they're being very, lavish about this thing. Just giving 3 months of Google Cloud so that everybody gets certified. So okay, so no more questions. Thank you everybody for joining. We'll see you next week. Thank you to all the organizers, Linda, Carol, everybody else who joined, new folks who joined, Cirilo, Luisa, everybody who joined, Rafael, Jose, always, Paul, the MVP, Amit, thank you very much for your questions. Elizabeth, thank you very much. Jeffrey, always answering questions here. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you in the next one. We're going to be reviewing the questions in next Thursday. Okay, so have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Are we taking a final picture or no final picture?